And Samantha was perfect for that, to help me get that out of my core, my soul.
Actually, an inspirational leadership book, kind of hybrid memoir.
I had read some of Sam's work before, and it was incredible. Like, it flowed for me as a reader.
My secret sauce for ghostwriting books is nailing somebody else's authentic voice.
Hello and welcome to Connected. I'm Divya Gopalan. So, how many ghostwriters do you know? Well, you probably have come across their work far more than you're aware. Ghostwriters are behind many influential published and recorded works, from presidential speeches to best-selling memoirs. And until recently, they have remained firmly behind the scenes. But now they're coming out of the shadows. To understand the profession and their impact, we're now joined by Captain Sandy Yawn, a leader, international speaker, businesswoman, and a series lead on Bravo's hit show Below Deck Mediterranean. She joins us from Los Angeles. And in New York, we have Samantha Marshall, a best-selling ghostwriter who worked with Captain Sandy on her award-winning biography, Be the Calm or Be the Storm. Thank you both so much for being on the program. I'm going to start with you, Captain Sandy. Why did you decide you wanted to write this book or have your story told?
Never in my life did I think I would write a book. Ever. Did it ever cross my mind? It's the fans from the show, Below Deck Mediterranean. Everyone watched the show and said, where's your leadership book? When's your leadership book coming out? And by the way, I've never had leadership lessons as well. So I have read books in the past where leadership books that were in story form. I got a book deal. We interviewed writers, and I really liked Samantha's style of writing and her vibe. And together we created this book. I wanted to write a book where people knew who I used to be, how I changed, and how, I became a leader. And also, I wanted to get across that never give up on anyone, because people can change. And Samantha was perfect for that, to help me get that out of my core, my soul.
Sam, Sandy talks about this being a leadership book with her story. What was it for you?
It is a leadership book, but a leadership book with a twist. There are a lot of leadership books in the market, but what really attracted me to Sandy's project is that she has this really unique lens that she sees the world through. I mean, as a navigator. And she's also risen to the top of a very male-dominated industry. And through all these things I discovered about Sandy after the fact, because it doesn't come across in the show, that she's risen from the most challenging circumstances. So it's not just a leadership book, it's actually an inspirational leadership book, kind of hybrid memoir, which is exactly the kind of lane I like to go in.
Sandy, given that this is also part personal story, what was the criteria you were looking for when you decided to choose a ghostwriter?
Okay, so I love to read books, and the type of writing, I can't, you know how sometimes when you read a book, you get turned off, you just close the book because you just can't get through it because of the way it's written. I had read some of Sam's work before, and it was incredible. Like, it flowed for me as a reader. Everybody's different. They like different styles of writing. And I also love that Sam was a war correspondent, and she also had that edge as well. I don't know. It was just everything that, listen, I never looked to write a book. I had no idea what I was doing, but I had a great agent that helped me interview different writers, and Sam was perfect. And she was able to dig deep and help me share with other people how you can change if you have self-leadership, and how you can, aspire to be better.
Right, Sam, Sandy mentions that you were a war correspondent, and among other publications, you worked for the Wall Street Journal, so you were a very high-profile journalist for a while. What would you say is the difference between journalism and ghostwriting, and why go in that direction?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, there are a lot of similarities, of course. A journalist has to be inquisitive, ask good questions, be very curious about the world and the people they're interviewing. but I went into the direction of book writing because I didn't like these sort of short stories where you just sort of write 500 words, then you're done and you move on to the next thing. I wanted to do a deep dive into a topic. And ghostwriting gave me the opportunity to do that, to write books. I love writing the long form books, but I'm not, high profile, probably not. I covered Vietnam, Hong Kong, Southeast Asia, not exactly a war, but some dicey situations, but I didn't have the name that would get me publishing deals on my own. So being able to work with high profile people like Sandy gave me the opportunity to flex that muscle.
Sandy, was there something you wanted to jump in and say?
No, I just love it because she interviewed former crew and she did a deep dive. And when I read, when you're reading it, you're like reliving it. And it's very sometimes emotional. And I felt, wow, if I feel this way, then other people are going to have a spark of emotion while they read this book. And I got to tell you, everybody that's read that book have all said to me they love the way it was written and the message behind it.
What would you say was your kind of experience working with Sandy in that sense and getting to know her?
Well, Sandy's a gem. It doesn't even, when you see her show, it doesn't even skim the surface of her depth and her compassion. She shares. Her whole core is about mentoring and bringing up other people. So there was no filter. It was just complete raw honesty. And for me, as a writer, that's an absolute gift to work with.
I love this chemistry you both have. Now I want to go take it to more the business side of things, and I want to hear from Madeline Morel, which someone you two might be familiar with, a New York-based literary agent and one of the few in the world who specializes in ghostwriters. She told us how the profession has evolved.
So I think what changed ghostwriting from being an occasional thing to really a significant genre within the book publishing industry was when so many of the smaller publishers were absorbed by publicly quoted corporations. So now, whereas before there used to be 30, 50 different publishing houses, now they're what we call the Big Five. And the Big Five, they have many imprints, but they're all owned by Wall Street public corporations who are interested in the bottom line. So what's happening in publishing is exactly what happened in Hollywood, where people only want to go after the banner names. And the banner names, in publishing, we refer to that as platformed authors, i.e. people who can bring a pre-existing audience to the book, not necessarily Hollywood celebrities. They can be leading doctors, physicians, politicians, business people in the health industry, within their field, but they have to have some kind of following.
So Sam, as Madeline was saying, these are people with some kind of following. They already have a persona out there. Why not just write a book on their own and just have a very good editor to guide them? Why go with a ghostwriter?
Good question. These are very busy people. So, that's a big time commitment. Not that the process isn't collaborative, but if you're working with a ghostwriter, a good ghostwriter, they can bring out your authentic voice. My job is to bring out the very best of Sandy or any other client. And I would find things interesting and little nuggets in the story that the author herself, Sandy in this case, would perhaps overlook or take for granted. But I have that objectivity, I have that distance from the subject so that I can pick things out and then drill down a little deeper and get these stories out of her. There are a lot of things about Sandy that nobody knew before the book because we just had these ongoing conversations, and she would tell me something and I'd be, wow, why do people not know this? And it would just be magic.
Sandy, tell us a little bit about that process of telling Sam your story and then her taking those parts out, which were possibly very personal to you. How do you trust someone with your essence?
You build a relationship. You obviously, when you choose your writer, you form this relationship. You've already done your due diligence. You know they're legit and successful. Again, I loved her style of writing, and knowing that she was a reporter, for me, that's an edge, and they're great at interviews. I think I'm getting better over the years because I've been doing, 8 seasons for Below Deck Med, and I sit in that interview chair after every charter, and we do pickup interviews, and it's the questions. And our showrunner is an excellent interviewer, and Sam is too. And that was something I really connected with. And we formed a bond and a friendship, and we care and love each other now.
Sandy, do you remember when we first met in person?
No.
Okay. Well, we first started collaborating during the COVID lockdown, Divya. So everything was via Zoom or Microsoft Teams or whatever. But I always like to try at least have a little in-person time with an author, because chemistry's important, trust's important, especially with somebody's lives. Sandy was passing through Miami, and it was Valentine's Day, and her lovely partner, Leah, couldn't make it out of Colorado because there was a snowstorm. So I left my husband at home in the condo, and Sandy and I had a girls' Valentine's Day, walking the beach together and just talking about any old thing. And it wasn't an interview, it wasn't for the book, it wasn't an interview for the book, it was just to get really comfortable with each other.
So you do get really comfortable with each other. You start becoming friends, I guess, to a certain extent. And then, of course, Sandy, you start telling Sam things that are very personal to you. Then how do you trust Sam to understand what needs to go in the book, or what needs to be told to the public, and what remains between the two of you?
Because we talk, and she would write, I would read and say, please take this out, or, leave that in. And if she felt like it was really necessary to stay in, she would, let me know that, and I trusted her. It's the mutual respect. Like, I respect Sam as a writer. I'm not a writer. I can't imagine sitting down for that time and writing a book. Like, I have a hard time writing my own speeches because I do a lot of public speaking. But it's really that mutual respect, and you form that trust. And she's done this before. I never have, so I trust her, and I trusted her.
That's right. And I love that you've said it's Sandy's book. So I want you to listen to this. We asked Madeline Morrell again how writers she works with feel about staying behind the scenes.
Well, I mean, some ghostwriters get a with credit on the cover of the book, so then it's obvious. A lot of them just get what we term as a generous acknowledgement. And that acknowledgement can be buried somewhere for someone who, understood my thoughts or something very vague like that. I think the general public is much more aware of ghostwriting. First, there was that movie, the Roman Polanski movie, The Ghostwriter, if you recall. And I think just because so many of these books are ghostwritten nowadays, yes, I do think more and more of the public are aware of it. And when Prince Harry's book came out, the New York Times devoted several articles to who his ghostwriter was.
Right. She mentions Prince Harry's book there. That was Spare. It was the fastest selling non-fiction book of all time. J.R. Moringer, the ghostwriter on the project, said he occasionally found himself at odds with the prince about how to frame a scene in the book. Does that resonate with you at all, Sandy?
No, we never, because it was a flow. We never had that problem. We never had that, I don't know if it's a problem, what you would call it, but it was such a flow that I can't explain it. It was like when you're open to bear all, and for me, it was easy to do because I was such a mess back in the day. Pink, the artist, sings a song. It's like you have no fear if you've already seen the bottom. I had nothing to fear. And with Sam, she just brought it out, and I trusted her. So we never really had that. Don't you agree, Sam?
Yeah, no, but it's also, it depends on the individual ghostwriter. I mean, sometimes there's ego involved. I always have to step aside and, leave the ego, check the ego at the door, because it's not about me and it's not about what I want. I can advocate if I think that's in the author's best interest, if I think that's going to make for a great book and be good for the author, but it's not about me.
Sandy, were you okay with admitting that you had a ghostwriter? And in fact, being very open about it.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I also think it actually, when you, Sam did a lot of work. Why wouldn't I want to do that? Like, it is a effort on both parts.
Sandy's the exception. You're amazingly generous to work with.
Yeah, thank you. But for me, it's like if more people did that, we'd have a better world to live in. And at the same time, it also shows people, wow, I could write a book. I can hire a ghostwriter. A lot of people don't even realize that. To me, it's like, it's a win-win.
I think it takes an incredible amount of security and belief in oneself to be able to do that. And given that, Sam, how does it feel when your book goes to the bestseller list and people don't know that you had a huge part in writing it?
I'm super proud of it. I don't need to have my name up in lights. I had plenty of that as a journalist. When an author succeeds and when they own it and when they really feel like it's their authentic voice and they've soared with that, I feel like I've really accomplished something, and that's enough.
Okay, I want to take you to another part of the world where perhaps ghostwriting isn't as evolved or perhaps as open. India is one of the world's biggest book markets, and it's predicted to be worth around 12 billion US dollars by the end of 2024. But Prema Govindan, a former editor with HarperCollins India, told Connected that in India, ghostwriting can be a thankless job.
Most people, there is some kind of stigma attached to possibly, getting somebody to write a book for you, because of which most ghostwriters are not acknowledged, not credited at all. There was a time, possibly 10-15 years ago, when a lot of books would be co-authored. So the people who would be writing the book would be called the co-authors. They would be given the due credit. If they were not given the credit, they would be part of the contracts and they would be sharing the royalty, for example. So that used to happen. So, but now, because I believe it has something to do with the fact that there is so much stress on personal branding, I, me, myself, and people are all looking to just have their own persona being reflected everywhere and not through anybody else. People are increasingly more and more reluctant to do this.
Right, Sam. Some of you must come out in this book. I mean, although it's someone else's story, there is a part of you that does come out in this book. And what is it that does come out, would you say? Is it in your writing? What is it that a ghostwriter can give? What is the flavor?
I guess it's the storytelling, and maybe my sensibility kind of frames which stories, which anecdotes get the most emphasis and which detail. But it's sort of hard when I get into the headspace of working on a book with somebody. It's often hard for me to tell, where I begin and the author ends. It ends up being such a blend. And it kind of has to be, because the secret sauce, or my secret sauce for ghostwriting books, is nailing somebody else's authentic voice. And you really kind of have to use, I don't know what the tricks are, maybe empathy, listening skills, skills that you have in abundance, Divya. You might want to consider this as a career at some point.
I'll give Madeline a call.
There you go. And it puts you in the headspace of the author, almost the way an actor or an actress gets prepared to play a character. So you really, the lines get a little blurred sometimes.
And I'd like to say this, like, I believe it takes a very humble person to be able to write a book for someone else, and the amount of time and effort that goes in it. And also, like Sam said, you check your ego at the door. And when you have someone like that writing your book, of course, part of them are going to be a part of that book. And to me, that is the most beautiful thing ever about writing a book, is having this collaboration that becomes something bigger than just my story.
Let me flip this around for you, Sandy. So when someone else is writing your book, they can be as searingly honest. They can really go into your experiences, as probably dissect them as much as possible and be as open about them for the world to see. But for you, this is your story and your experiences. And I understand from this book, there's some very, very personal experiences in this book that might be hard to talk about. How did you decide what was important and what needed to be told?
You know, I didn't decide anything. Sam got it out of me. Like, I didn't wake up and think, oh, today I'm going to share about this. It was the way she interviewed me. It was our conversations that just flowed, and it was her style that captured that. It wasn't my intention, nor was I even going to hold anything back. It just wasn't in the forefront of my mind. Sam brought that out. And that, to me, that's the beautiful collaboration that happens, because, hey, if you go sit down and try to write your own book, you're going to start with what? You know, so when you have a person like Sam, a ghostwriter, they already know how to do it. It isn't like they have to reinvent the wheel. And to me, that makes it much easier, because like she said, that's her job, right? My job is, I have epaulets on, I go to sea, and I do other things. I was never the person to sit still and write a book, but I love that, her style of getting it out of me.
It was a conversation, Sandy.
Yes.
A long conversation.
Yes.
And something that is threatening to cut into that conversation, and I have to bring this in because I think across the board, publishers, writers, etc., are worried about this, is artificial intelligence. Some people are going to chat GPT to write their books. Sam, how concerned are you about this?
I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little nervous. Now, chat GPT, I've been experimenting with it a little bit just to see what it can do. It's not there yet. I'm not saying it won't be in a couple of years, but it can very competently throw together some sort of generic words that flow. Not a word salad, a bit better than a word salad. It can take material and organize notes, but what it can't do is give it soul. There's a kind of patina or a voice print that you get from the human to human interaction, that the process of building the relationship with an author like Sandy. It can't be done through AI, at least not yet from what I can tell. And if you want your book to really come across as your core and your essence, then you're not going to use AI for it. AI has its uses. It's a good tool. It's good for organizing transcribed notes maybe and things like that, but I would not write a book with it, no.
Sandy, would you have considered using AI to write your book, or do you want that human touch?
I agree with Sam. You have to invoke emotion. It doesn't. Listen, I do a lot of public speaking. I tried to have it write a speech for me once, and it just wasn't there. Like, I had to redo the whole thing, and I thought, I'm not wasting my time or my money on this, because the reality is a lot of times you think what people think they want you to say. If you just say what's really in your heart, and that's something that AI can't do, because there's no heart and soul, like Sam said. So to me, it's like when I go do public speaking, it comes from my core. It's not words on a screen. It is actually from me. And so
we're running out of time, but before I go, I want to quickly get Sam, with you first, what is your takeaway from working on this book with Captain Sandy, and what did you learn from the book?
Oh, so much from Sandy. Really, how the title is it, Be the Calm or Be the Storm, how to really kind of focus and bring yourself back to this point of stillness to get through any situation. As we were working together, I had a health crisis, and a lot of Sandy's, well, she was very supportive through all of that, of course, but a lot of Sandy's wisdom in the book really helped me get through some very harrowing experiences with my treatment.
And Sandy, Sam basically ghost wrote it for you, but in your own words, what would you want the takeaway from the book to be for our viewers?
First and foremost, Sam, you know how she talked about the nuggets? Like, I didn't know they were nuggets. It was just a way of life. So she pointed that out. To me, it's like a solution. This book has a solution to any problem that's in your life. And I hope that they find a solution from my book. That would be the takeaway.
Wonderful to talk to both of you. Thank you so much for being on the program. It's been such a fun conversation. I would say one of the best, most fun conversations I've had. And with that, we come to the end of the program. Thank you so much, Captain Sandy and Samantha Marshall. Samantha ghostwrote Captain Sandy's book, Be the Calm or Be the Storm. It's an award-winning biography. Thank you so much for being on the program. And to our viewers, it's been good to have your company. If you've enjoyed today's episode or have anything you'd like to add to the dialogue, do join the conversation on our social media. And remember, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay connected.